Hey guys, what's happening? I am just sitting here at my workbench, just kind of breathing a big sigh of relief. I am completely tired and don't plan on doing any work today. And the reason is because it is Monday, July the 13th. I think I got that right. I'm still a little fuzzy. And just last night was the completion of International Scale Modeler's 48-hour build challenge to commemorate the beginning of the Battle of Britain. So we started Friday night at 8, and we had until last night at 8 to build anything we wanted to that represented the Battle of Britain. I decided that I was going to take it as a personal challenge to myself because July the 11th, Saturday, is also the anniversary of my own particular battle. 6 years ago is the day that I was injured and initially paralyzed from the neck down. So every year on the 11th, I try to do something, to challenge myself and basically, wave my finger at the universe in defiance of the shitty hand that I got dealt on that day and prove that it's not going to hold me down. So, at any rate, what I decided to build was a Hawker Hurricane. Now, initially, I was going to build the Tamiya kit because I know that that's going to be pretty predictable. And what better thing for a 48-hour challenge? But it was like $60, and the only one I could find was the one that had all the figures, and I just decided that I didn't want to spend that much money. This is a perfect example of penny wise and pound foolish, let me tell you. Because what I ended up doing was buying the italeri kit, which was like $40. I decided, hey, building something in 48 hours goes against everything I stand for. So I might as well just really go all out with the stupidity and build a kit that I would probably never build. Number one, I'm not really a fan of the Hurricane because as much as she was one of the most important aircraft in World War II, in fact, 55% of the victories in the Battle of Britain were scored by Hurricanes, and they made 15,000 of them. So it's a great aircraft, don't get me wrong, but she's just not sexy. I'm a P-51 and a Spitfire guy. I love mosquitoes and typhoons, and they're sexy girls, and the Hurricane is just kind of frumpy. That's really all you can say about it. So, at any rate, not only did I decide to build the Hurricane, a kit that I'll probably never build again, but I decided I would build the italeri kit and just really go all out with the out of my comfort zone. So, how did that go? It was not a particularly good choice, and I'll explain why. But first, let's look at a few pictures and see what I was able to pull off. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to try and do a quick run through of this and not make it all that exhaustive. In keeping with the theme of the build being extra fast, I'm going to try and make the review extra fast. What did I like about the kit? Well, it's got a really nice little full-color booklet of reference photos. That's probably my favorite thing about it at this point. Initially, I was pretty happy because the cockpit has pretty decent detail, and they did a good job of keeping the tolerances pretty loose. and it all went together pretty easily, which I thought was nice given that I was in a hurry. But the honeymoon was over about the time that I started putting the fuselage together. And that's when the fit issues really started to rear their ugly head. Basically, I had gaps all the way along the seams that I had to deal with, along the top of the fuselage, all the way across the nose. They weren't horrible. I didn't have to do any rescribing, but nonetheless, it was work that I didn't want to be doing. At nearly midnight on Friday night. The underside is kind of nice because it has a separate piece, and so you don't get any seam down there, and that's kind of a good thing. But one thing that I had read online that is universally experienced is by people who build this kit is that they've included an engine, which for 1/48 is not too bad, and this panel and this panel down here are removable. Or can be, you can build it with those panels off so that you can display the engine. If you choose to do it with those panels in place, be prepared for a lot of gnashing of your teeth and profanity because the fit is terrible. And once they're in, this exhaust won't go through the slot to plug into its holes in the side of the engine block. So I had to spend some time, very carefully scraping and carving the sides of that slot so that I could get that exhaust stack to go in there. And there were just a lot of issues like that. Basically, every hole that has a mating pin that you've got to plug something into, like the radio mast, just about every little round hole like that, the tail wheel. Be prepared to enlarge it. Almost none of them were plug and chug, and I find that extremely annoying. One nice thing about it is it had weighted tires, and the landing gear on the Hurricane is pretty complex, and I suppose that all of that considered, that the landing gear on it went together fairly well. I hate landing gear; they always frustrate me. So I probably shouldn't say too much about that, but that wasn't too bad. Before I forget, the other huge gap that I had was at the wing root on both sides. It wasn't horrible on this side. I was able to take care of it with just a little bit of filler, but on the opposite side over here, I ended up having to stretch some sprue and use that with some Tamiya Extra Thin to fill the gap. And it still has a little bit of a step there. You can't see it very much, but it is definitely there, and it was pretty unforgivable. The joint of the horizontal stabilizers with the fuselage is also pretty bad, but I just decided not to even mess with it because I just didn't have time. There was just no way that I was going to be able to get that all done, and just one of those things that I just decided that I was going to have to live with. Also, something that I found out about 10 minutes before the deadline was that the prop wouldn't go on. Not only was the hole in the center of the spinner not big enough for the stub coming out of the engine, but there was a kind of a boss on there. Basically, even if it had fit, there would have been a gap between the spinner and the nose that at scale would have been about 3 inches. Now I know that Hurricanes had a little bit of a gap there anyway, but I chose to basically just grind the back side of the spinner completely away and epoxy it flush to the nose, just so I could get it done. Another thing that was pretty annoying that I did not find out until, of course, it was too late because I hadn't been paying attention, is that they did not give you a hole for the pitot tube. So be prepared to drill that hole for yourself. Let me think. What else gave me fits? I don't know. I mean, I guess if I had never built a Tamiya kit, I might not feel like that this was just super horrible. Having built lots of monogram kits as a kid, I might, if that's was, my entire experience, I might say, well, it wasn't so bad. But once you've built Tamiya, there's just no going back. And it's amazing how good those guys do at making everything straightforward and how difficult it seems like everybody else makes it. So anyway, that's about the size of things for this kit. One thing else I want to mention before I forget. This kit came with cartograph decals. Now, everybody raves about cartograph decals and bitches and moans about Tamiya decals. And so I was excited. I'm finally going to get to try some of these legendary decals. And I got to say, guys, not so impressed. I personally don't have that much trouble with Tamiya decals. In fact, the ones on my ME262 were flawless. They went down with zero argument. These cartograph decals, the colors, the thickness, everything was fantastic, but they didn't magically lay down either. In fact, on the wing roundels, you can see where they have to conform over this little widget right here. They didn't want to do that, even with some microsol. And I was using microsol because I thought, hey, these decals are supposed to be easy. I don't need to go to the nuclear option with Solvaset. Well, it didn't lay down with microsol, and so I went ahead and went to the Solvaset, and as you can see, it cracked to hell. And the only saving grace on that is that it's on the bottom. If it wasn't for that, that would be a perfect decal. But hey, it is what it is. That's just going to be one of the souvenirs of this being a 48-hour project. The other thing that I should tell you is that has to do with decals is the instrument panel. Now, one thing that is kind of cool is this kit comes with its own little photo etch sheet. And you get some seat belts, and they're not too bad. They're fairly easy to install. It's brass photo etch, so they form fairly well. And you get a brass photo etch instrument panel, and they give you a decal that you're supposed to put on the plastic backing and then put the brass photo etch over top of it. Guys, I can't even begin to describe how far out of registration the decal is with the photo etch part. I mean, so badly that if you lined up the gauges on the center section, that all the rest of them on the left and the right were only half exposed. And, I really shouldn't have spent time fixing that in a 48-hour build. I should have just stuck to my idea that I was going to be canopy closed and, not even worried about the instrument panel. But, my OCD is sort of strong and I couldn't help myself. And I ended up having to cut that instrument panel decal into 4 or 5 sections and iteratively slide them around and then test the placement of the photo etch part 10 or 12 times until I got registration that I felt like was something I could live with. So just terrible. I mean, overall, I have to say this is a terrible kit. Everybody said, why didn't you get the Airfix one? Well, it was out of stock, or I would have. And next time, if I ever do another 48-hour build, it's a guarantee that it will not be an italeri kit and that it probably will be a Tamiya kit. Lesson learned. Okay, so there you have it. Just like the entire project, that was a quick and dirty review of the italeri 1/48 scale Mark I Hurricane. New tooling from 2011. I have to say that overall, even though the kit was frustrating and I literally finished with 5 minutes to spare. Okay, technically I didn't finish because I didn't have the antenna wire installed and the boarding stirrup and, the pitot tube. But, I was, and that pissed me off because had I rested for, 30 minutes less at some point over the course of that 48 hours, that wouldn't have been a problem. But, it is what it is, and, it was a great learning experience. I would recommend that anytime you feel like doing one of these 48-hour build challenges, do it. It'll test you, and you'll be totally knackered by the time the thing is over with. But it's a great learning experience. My goal was less to finish in 48 hours than it was to see how much of my normal process I could squeeze into 48 hours and come up with, the same kind of result that I always shoot for. Um, and I have to say, I feel like I came pretty close to doing that. I didn't do any super detailing for sure. And there's some silvering on some of these decals that I'm definitely very unhappy about. But the good news on those is that given the kind of weathering that I try to do, it doesn't really show up very much, and I can live with it. And I try to put decals straight on the paint, at least for this type of aircraft. I like the fewest number of clear coats, so you might say that I earned that flaw myself because I didn't want to put any future down beforehand. At any rate, doing the 48-hour project is a huge learning experience because it'll force you to think about things in a completely different way. I didn't want to cut corners, but there were a few places where I had to try some things to be more aggressive if I wanted to make sure I finished in time. And quite frankly, some of those things are things that I will take away with me for normal projects. Here's one in particular that I like. I mentioned that a lot of those pin and hole fits were oversized. And I decided to try something because I had a couple of them that were basically line to line, where I had a tiny little thing that I couldn't quite get to go in that hole, but I knew it was close. And I thought, okay, I can spend the time and the energy to get my reamer or my drill bit and make that hole a little bit bigger. But I decided to try just going ahead and putting a little Tamiya extra thin in the hole to see if it would sort of lubricate things. And whether it's because it kind of pre-melts it or it actually lubricates it, I think it's more the former than the latter. Basically, it makes that line-to-line fit slide right in there, and boom, you're instantly glued in place. So that's a trick that I'm going to use in the future because I hate reaming holes. And now that I know that I don't have to, at least on some of them, that'll definitely save me some time and energy. So again, I strongly encourage anybody to participate in one of these things because it's a completely different way of looking at things, and it will definitely help build your skills and your experience level, and that's never a bad thing. All right, guys, if you're still watching, thanks again. I appreciate it as always. Much love. Take care.
still at you, and I wanna scream inside you. No one, did you ever look at me? I saw a place where